Looking forward to this one tonight. Think the Leafs finish the job here in Buffalo?
I do, but everything's so unpredictable. I thought Montreal was going to finish the job last night against Chicago. That didn't happen. I think they finish it. I think they sense the urgency. I think they want to have that Thursday versus Detroit as a rest day. I heard you guys just talking about the milestones. Let's get that out of the way, right? And get Marner, hopefully have the century mark, get Matthews his 400th. Guys can rest on Thursday. They can gear up and start getting ready for the Battle of Ontario.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but I've already done that. Thinking of the Battle of Ontario, what's your take on? I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone wants to face the Florida Panthers in the first round. I think they're just a juggernaut for the playoffs. But the Ottawa Senators have also had their number. Does that concern you at all, their record against the Ottawa Senators this year?
Listen, it's funny. Ottawa has had their number all year, but I'm not sure any of that matters. We've seen that in the past where teams get swept in the regular season, and the playoffs is a completely different animal. We're all hoping for the Battle of Ontario. I mean, Jay, I don't think you were involved in any. I think it was a little before when you got to the Leafs, but those were great, intense matchups. And for the younger listeners and viewers out there, you want to see Curtis Joseph, who's the most mild-mannered guy in the world, could go completely apoplectic and lose his mind. It was during the Battle of Ontario. That's the intensity that you see in that rivalry. So it'll be really exciting.
That's right.
So many moments in those respective series, from Cujo smashing into the ref, the big hits, the big goals. Corey Cross we had on the podcast last summer. I'm really fired up. I was going to ask you too, as well, from like a TV rating standpoint, how big is the potential of a Battle of Ontario here?
It's huge, right? I mean, you take two very passionate fan bases. The Leaf fan base is the biggest in the National Hockey League. It's coast to coast. You have the geography, you have the history there. And quite frankly, it's shaping up to be a really good 2-month run for Sportsnet because, you have Winnipeg and they looked in a nice position to make a deep run. You have Edmonton. There's always that fan base and people who want to see, obviously, Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid. And then you have potentially the Battle of Ontario, and we'll see if Montreal can get things done. So it'd be 5 Canadian teams in, which would be fantastic. And Calgary's not dead yet, although, they're hanging, they're basically on life support a little bit, but they're still kind of hanging around. So I think it's going to be a real bonanza for us. And you know what? It's been a good year. 4 Nations, I think, woke up some hockey fans, created some new hockey fans. It was such an incredible, dramatic, 11 days. And I think it kind of got the juices flowing and got us into the stretch run towards the playoffs. And here we go.
Yeah, I agree. That's an interesting point that 4 Nations kind of set the table for the hockey that people have been longing for so much. And I don't think fans have ever really looked forward to, anything like the playoffs as they do, because it does ramp up so much. But it leads to my question of, what do you think is the key for the Toronto Maple Leafs to, maybe have more success or dictate the play? Like, what are some of the key components that you want to see if you're cheering for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well, one thing I would say, guys, is in talking, doing the Leaf regional shows with Nick Kyprios, Justin Bourne, Elliot Friedman, one discernible difference seemingly between this Leafs edition and previous ones is the blue line is their strength. The goaltending is their strength. We've always gone into these series saying, well, let's see what the core 4 can do. And we know how time goes away, space goes away, and scoring goes down dramatically. And maybe that'll suit this Leafs team a little bit better. What we've seen them do during this last stretch, they're 8-1-1 in their last 10 games. They're playing really the style of hockey that Craig Berube wants. I sat down for an interview with him on Friday, and I talked to him, and I said, has the team finally sort of come around to the style you want? And he said, yeah, they've really made leaps and bounds. And, obviously the addition of Brandon Carlo has been a big part of that. But when you think about this blue line, and granted, they're not healthy right now, but when you think about this blue line with McCabe, Tanev, OEL, Carlo, I mean, we're talking about, and I'm not even mentioning Riley, but I'm just talking about how different this feels in general to previous blue lines. They've blocked in the last 3 games. I just looked this up. They've blocked 69 shots. They've allowed 69 shots on goal. If you're getting above average goaltending, which they've received all year, guys, and you're blocking half the shot attempts that are going towards your net, that is a good recipe. It takes a bit of the pressure off that core 4 to score. Having said that, listen, they can't go 1 for 21 on the power play as they did in the playoff series versus Boston last year. They have to be consistent and proficient on the power play. And instead of the core four, maybe this year will be the fantastic five. If Matthew Knies can continue his maturation, this is a guy who brings a different element to this team. And Jay, I'm sure as a former guy who liked to get his nose dirty out there, you're loving seeing what Matthew Knies can deliver, because I sat down with him too. And I said, you're 227, you look a little bigger than that. And he kind of smiled and said, yeah, I'm a little bit bigger than that. I mean, this guy's a beast, right? He plays a style of hockey. There's three guys in the league this year with 180 hits and 25 plus goals: Tom Wilson, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Knies. And I'm not saying he's Tkachuk or Wilson, but I'm saying the evolution of what he can do and what he can provide on a strong forecheck is really important to this Leaf team. So it does feel, to many people, I'm sure you guys sense this, it does feel a little bit different. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy road for them at all, but it does feel like maybe they have the better makeup to make a deeper playoff run this year.
I'm glad you brought up Matthew Knies. He's just had an unbelievable year, and this is what they've been missing since losing Zach Hyman, right? I mean, it has that feel where it's like he is just a perfect fit with Matthews and Marner.
Net front presence, strong forecheck, shows some tenacity, some ferocity. And when you're going to be on a line with Matthews and Marner, get them the puck, create some space for them. And he's great at doing those two things. And he has some finish. And we've seen in the last few games, he definitely has some finish. So, a lot of people have scratched their head and said, oh my God, I can't believe the Leafs let Zach Hyman go. And yeah, if you could do that over, I mean, he didn't, I don't know if anyone projected him to be a 50-plus goal scorer as he was in Edmonton, but he certainly was a great player in Toronto. And now, essentially, you have sort of a different, younger version who could provide a lot of the same elements as Zach Hyman. So that is really important.
Mm-hmm. David, how about in the crease? I think it's kind of all but been laid out that Anthony Stolarz is probably going to start in the playoffs, but how would you deploy him and Joseph Woll? I mean, they've kind of been switch hitting them for a long time. You saw what Boston did with Swayman and Ullmark in previous playoffs. What do you think is the best scenario to run with these two goaltenders?
I'm so intrigued, guys. I'm sure you guys have talked about it ad nauseum. I think you start with Stolarz. I think that's a given. I just think he's earned that that opportunity. What'll be really interesting, I'll make for a great show for you guys. If the Leafs lose game one, then what, right? Like if Stolarz shows some shakiness, I might be, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I don't think Stolarz has ever started a playoff game. I think they ran all the way with Bobrovsky last year. So he's a 30-year-old who's never started a playoff game. And that's not a knock on him. I'm just making the point. You just never know how he's going to feel at that moment on that stage. I have great confidence in Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll. I think the Leafs have a really good, solid tandem. I think, Jay, though, it will be a shorter leash. I don't think it's going to be, you go out there and you have a bad game and we'll give you a second and third chance. I think it's going to be like we have as much confidence in the other guy sitting on the bench that if you stumble a little bit, we know we can go to the other guy and hopefully he can provide some stability in that. But that's really been one of the great storylines for the Leafs this year. They're in the top 5 in save percentage. That was not the story in previous playoff runs, whether it was with Freddie Anderson or, we can go way back to James Reimer and some of the other goalies, Samsonov, et cetera. So I think they're feeling very confident in this tandem going into the postseason.
Very fortified. And that's the big thing for me is you look at the blue line specifically. You brought this up earlier on, like they're heavy, they're strong, they're big, they're tough to play against. And even just comparing them to maybe like even 2 postseasons ago, it's like night and day when you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think their blue line is sort of the depth of their blue line, and the guys, they think defense first. Maybe the one thing they would love, and Riley provides a lot of this, is that guy who, the perfect pass, tape to tape, easy exits through their own zone. They do have more of a chip kind of crew in there, but just the way that McCabe and Tanev and really even OEL and Carlo go about the game, lock down defenders. They think defense first. They're very conscientious. And then when you throw in Nick, here's the other thing, Marner and Matthews and a lot of their offensive players have been very conscientious, being, Selke type players, 200-foot players. And I think that's something that's been sort of mandated from Craig Berube from day one. And it seems to really be part of the fabric of this team. Some games, let's face facts, some of the games aren't as exciting as they used to be. They're not as run and gun as they used to be, which From our standpoint, as fans and media people kind of sucks at times. But it's a winning brand of hockey, 50 wins, 100-plus points, and a team that when push comes to shove and the space is gone in the postseason, they're ready for that style of hockey. They're 21-4-4 in one-goal games, and I believe that's the best mark in the National Hockey League. So they're used to grinding out wins, and so far that's been a big recipe for success.
David, to people that aren't more hardcore Leafs fans, I think everyone's always saying, oh, they don't have a goaltender, their defense isn't good enough. And although those things are fantastic this year, and that's great, but the problem for the Maple Leafs in the past has been scoring goals in the playoffs. What do you think the big boys and the goal scorers on the team need to focus on to try to alleviate that problem this year?
You're 100% right, Jay, because I've had a lot of friends, diehard Leaf fans, go, oh man, if they're damn goaltending defense. And I go, guys, look at their elimination games. Like, go back, game 7 last year, Boston. They didn't lose 6-5. They lost 2-1 in overtime, right? 1 for 21 on the power play. When they got eliminated by Columbus in game 5, I think that was a shutout game. When they got eliminated game 7 versus Montreal, Nylander scored with 2 minutes left to give them a goal. Like, that has been essentially the problem. You're 100% right. How can they get more offense? I think, first of all, maybe there's just more balance this year. I think as important as the core 4 is, we talked about Matthew Knies. Bobby McMahon's going to be very important, right? Like, they need some of these complementary pieces, whether it's Max Pacioretty or Nick Robertson or Max Domi or Holmberg. Some of these guys have to contribute and take a bit of the pressure off their star players. Having said that, again, you're making $11 million for a reason. If you're Austin Matthews, if you're John Tavares, Nylander and Marner, like, these guys do have to find a way for some of their regular season success to translate into postseason success. I think Mitch Marner going to Four Nations, guys, I really think that's going to be a jump for him. What was the first thing he said when he arrived back, after the gold medal? He said, playing with Crosby and McKinnon and McDavid and seeing how they operate in these intense moments. He was sitting there in the dressing room staring down in overtime against the US for gold. And we know that's been a big problem with the Leafs in the past, is psychologically they haven't been able to fortify themselves in the biggest moments. I think Mitch Marner will be helped by the fact he's had that run. He's seen how guys who've won championships go about their business, and that can translate into the Leafs dressing room. And Brad Treliving deserves some credit. And I'm going on and on here, but he added Steven Lorentz, he added OEL, he added Stolars, he added 3 Stanley Cup winners to this group. He added Chris Tanev, who was in a Western Conference final last year. He's added guys who've had some playoff success, and I think that'll help maybe fortify psychologically what this team needs to really dig down deep when it matters most.
Do you have a regular season MVP?
Might be controversial. I think I'm leaning towards Connor Hellebuck. And I'm probably, and I'm not a guy who goes, oh my God, like I know they have the Vezina. I just think I took a really close look, and what he's doing is exceptional. It's actually probably more impressive than what Carey Price did in 2015. And you're on the number 1 team in the NHL. 36 times this year, he's allowed 2 or fewer goals in games they've won. It takes a ton of pressure off that team to have to score goals. He's been dynamic. I think I'm leaning that way. Jay, you chuckled. You think it's a bad pick? Be honest with me here.
No, I didn't. I was thinking Maple Leafs, but you go big league. I got a buddy who's a diehard Jets fan, and
I'm sorry.
There's just that caveat with Hellebuck of, like, it's kind of Leafy, like, okay, but in the playoffs he seems to kind of be different. So he has that motivation to prove himself in the playoffs, but I don't know, they're scary. And you talk about him being back there and then them having the ability to score goals, like their first line is out of control. So not at all. I was sitting here going, is he going to say Marner? Is he going to say JC? Is he going to say
the reason I went to the league is because I'm trying to figure out the ballot right now for but not just that. I think it's Marner. I mean, if Stolars didn't get injured and played 55 and 60 games at the level he's played in the 40 games, then I would say it could be Stolars. But is it anyone? Who else could it be if it's not Marner?
Willie?
Yeah. Marner's been better.
Yeah.
Marner's been more consistent. Willie's amazing and then kind of disappears.
Yeah.
He's amazing and then he kind of disappears for a few games. In the last couple of games, he's sort of disappeared. I know he had that beautiful tip-in goal on the Domi pass, but Marner's been consistently, to me, their best player and the catalyst, and he kills penalties. The overtime, goals. Like, I just think you can kind of go through it check by check, and to me, it'd be Marner.
DA, I wouldn't be here without you. You're my favorite teacher at the College of Sports Media. Appreciate your time today. You're killing it, buddy. We'll talk soon, okay? Enjoy the playoffs.
Don't blame your career on me, please. Gentlemen, thanks
Dave.
for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah, and good seeing you again, Jay. I remember covering you way back with the Leafs back in the good old days.
I appreciate it. You're one of my favorites listening to you on the broadcast. So good to talk to you in person. Thanks for coming on.
Anytime, guys. Enjoy, and let's hope for a good playoff run. It'll be a lot of fun for everyone.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.